So, so you're not thinking we need to gamify FedFis?
I don't know, man. It was pretty cool, but
We'd have like Cowboys and Indians or something?
I mean, we cowboyed FedFis, I think.
So like
Same
Cowboys
kind of
and
thing.
cows?
Yeah,
If you rope a steer, you get points.
yeah.
If you get
You
gored
could
to
have like
death,
a farm.
yeah, then you have to have better.
You could have a farm, like the locusts get your crop,
Okay,
kind of like Oregon Trail.
so that's a farmer, not a rancher.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, this is the keynote difference right here between a farmer and a rancher. What's a rancher?
Well,
He
we don't
raises animals.
basically don't break the ground, except if a cow can eat it. Like oats is a good example.
Yeah, that'll work.
Hay is a good example.
You gotta have your winter crop.
Yeah. But we don't grow food for people to eat. That's basically
That's
the big
farming.
difference.
That's farming.
Oh.
That's the big difference.
Hi, I'm Sarah Fankhauser, CEO and president at DCI. Look forward to having this opportunity to talk to you guys today along with Tanna. Just a little bit of background about DCI, and I'll let Tanna go ahead and give some additional information as well. Privately held company. We're owned by about 30 bankers today. Our board of directors are made up of bankers also, except for one technologist. So very unique in the industry. Our ownership is huge. Biggest differentiator is the way we take care of customers. A lot of our competitors like to fight size against us, that we're smaller than them, and we don't apologize for our size because of our size, we do what we can do for our customers. So, Tanna?
She thought this out.
That was good.
Okay, winner.
Yeah.
We've done a couple of introductions in our lives. Hi, I am Tanna Faulkner. I am Senior Vice President of Digital Channels and Sales at DCI. I am what we know at DCI as a boomerang. I spent 9 years managing national sales for DCI, and then I went and ran national sales for several other companies, one being a competitor of ours, and then came back to DCI about 4 years ago. I just tell Sarah that I went to all the other places and they just beat the bad stuff out of me at all those other places, and now I'm back with just the good stuff for DCI again. So
Yeah.
enjoy.
And I tell everybody that Tanna came back from the dark side.
There you go.
I get that here too.
Well, we always
Yeah.
tell everybody, you two are like the dynamic duo. That is absolutely unstoppable.
Well,
Batman and Robin.
you want to
Okay,
run through
okay,
a couple
I'm
of.
gonna do a data timeout right here.
Okay.
Okay,
Good.
Okay.
Well, let's
so
talk about results.
This is a couple of notes I made here. I do this. I'm
I know you do.
prepared.
I know
I
you
am
do.
prepared.
I don't have any notes.
Okay. So this is the cool stuff
Sure.
that, you know, we've worked a lot of partnerships with them in the past and made introductions and done neat things together. And I really want to dig into some of the firsts that they do. First
Yeah.
install this, first blah, 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 blah. Okay. But one thing I want to talk about, being bank owned as a
Bingo.
core, this is massive. When your entire board is made of bankers, your customers are bankers, there's bankers everywhere. It's
Yep.
bankers, right? And we're kind of big on bankers helping bankers. So yeah. So one of the things I wrote down here that, you know, focused on tomorrow, they're not solving 20-year-old problems like everybody else is. You know,
So
there's such an amount of time spent at these cores that are trying to work on
maintenance.
maintenance, pissed off customer with the same.
Does
old
your
stuff.
roadmap look like a roadmap, or does it look like maintenance?
That-
Right.
I
And
literally
that's
wrote that
something
down.
cool about
Roadmap of
DCI.
innovation instead of a
Amen.
roadmap of maintenance.
Yes. Yes.
That's what I want to talk about. And,
Yeah.
and part of this, I think you guys have a statistic that you work off of. It's like 75% of your if somebody calls
First
in
cut.
a problem on the spot.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Correct. So first of all, we have an SLA in our contract for response time. The SLA in our contract says that they'll get a response within an hour, guaranteed, anytime they call in for support. We have an internal goal that a call never sits longer than 30 minutes, so that we can get a call taken care of as soon as possible. The average response time is right at 8 minutes because about 75 to 80% of the time it goes straight to a support individual to help them.
And I'm going to tag on to that just a little bit, because one other thing that's very unique about DCI is we have one phone number. So that is 75% of all the core calls, the card calls, the internet banking calls, the mobile banking calls, the loan calls. 75% of all of those calls are answered on the first call, and they are resolved on the first call.
That's a
And
big-
I don't know that anybody else in the industry can say something like that. And that's a little aggressive for me to say that, but I just feel like having one place to call, it just solves a ton of problems for a banker every single day.
If you had
and
6 or
not-
7 banks, it'd be different, right? But you
Yeah.
got a bunch. I mean,
Yeah.
you're like the 5th biggest core out there.
Our support people have the authority to get anybody in the company involved in a problem, even if it's Sarah. So they have more authority than probably any of the rest of us in the whole company. They can call a programmer, they can call an operations person. There's no stopping or limit to where they call. So when all of our competitors are triaging those calls, we're just solving those problems. We're not triaging anything.
Well, hats
And-
off to y'all. I think it's important for any CEO to never lose touch with the customers, and all of them do.
Well, and it's hard, right? I mean, big company, small company, I mean, it's difficult for the senior team to stay at that ground level. I mean, we struggle with it, right? I mean, we're out there, it's what we do, is out there talking to people, working on stuff, and still, right? Things pop up in internal calls. You're like, I didn't know that. It's just a lot of ground to cover.
You'd be surprised what I don't know about my company.
You're welcome.
That was a good one.
Yes. Let's talk a little bit. So we talked, I think partnerships is a huge thing at DCI that I see. Rather than everything is owned by the core, you're going to get the core stuff, right? You guys have some really close partners, some that you've actually acquired, right? Which is cool. Some of our mutual friends. And then a lot of things, I think in kind of your newer areas, the innovative areas where you go out and grab a cool partner, right? And I think that's neat because you guys are the trusted party. You're going to put them through the paces. And I know y'all, right? You're not going to let anything go out the door that's not ready. So you toe that line of innovation and force the partners to be ready.
Yeah, so it's interesting how that started. We used to use a ton of vendors, just a ton of vendors, and we really focused on core. And of course, all of our competitors, that's what they sold against us. You have to get all of these contracts, and we're a one-stop shop, even though it's not tied together. So we started looking at opportunities for acquisition. So the very first acquisition we did was a Teller BSA AML product that we had been reselling for 15 years. So we knew the products, we knew the employees, we knew the customers. So it was super easy for us. The biggest benefit for us on those acquisitions is now we control support. We control development, testing, everything. So then after that, the next thing we did was internet banking. We did not have a product issue with internet banking with the vendors that we were using. We had a service issue. And because of the service that we give to our customers expect that from the vendors as well. So we're super careful when we're making partnerships because they expect the same level of service from everybody else. And if they can't get that, then it's on us because we brought that vendor to them. So that's just kind of how we started in that process. I will tell you, we don't have an answer for every single thing out there. We do have partnerships as well, but we are very careful about tying them in very closely together so that it's not still 30 sign-ons, it's still one sign-on within core. And the other thing that we're really careful about is one phone call, like Tanna talked about earlier. So even if it's a vendor, they call DCI, and then we get the vendor involved if we need to.
Can I have you guys address a question for me? Okay, this is something, and again, think like a core.
Can I point out we both wore our FinTech Cowboys shirts today?
Dude, did you copy that?
Nice.
You copied
I just
me.
noticed that.
I didn't even know we did it either.
Cool.
Okay, that's
Sorry,
good catch.
you're back.
All righty. When you grow as a core, so let's say that we have, I'm going to, banker world, here we go. If you've got X number of core conversion capability with your staff and your team,
The Q.
and let's say your sales team goes off the rails and they sell twice as much as what you normally would, you're going to find the next year your implementation is just crippled, right? Because we were only supposed to do this many, and now we got this many to do, and it's a mess. And so you can't hardly grow this business really, really well and effectively. And what you'll find every time is, right?
Right.
Okay, so when I see a company that what we call pound for pound, number
Right.
one, this is number one.
DCI
Pound
is
for
the
pound.
number one selling core for their size.
Number one.
That's pretty unreal.
Okay, pound for pound, number
Mhm.
one, right here. You got them on the line, right here.
Yep.
That means they sold more per user base, divided by new users, divided by than
Than
anybody
anybody
else.
Mhm.
And
And a
not only,
staggering amount.
Yeah.
Like,
There's not a
yes.
close second here.
yes,
And
it's been for multiple years.
This is where it really gets important and where my question comes in. It's almost impossible to do that and maintain the same level of implementation time that you've had in the past. And then to compound that, you guys are like notoriously known for super fast implementation
and service.
So how do you
all
do
of those are competing ideologies, right?
that? Right.
Like those all hurt each other.
Logistically in your business, this
That's
doesn't
tough.
work. So how did you do it?
So I'm going to let Tanna talk a little bit about her relationship with implementations, because we had this exact problem last year because, well, our sales team has been knocking it out of the park the last several years. Last year was our best year ever. But I'll tell you from the budgeting point of view, when I'm working with the head of implementations come budget time, it takes 6 months to a year to get an implementation specialist up to speed. So, when we talk about, okay, we have these slots and we're going to fill these slot charts and we're going to work through these implementations, you have to not only know that you're good for next year, but you're also good for the following year with those same numbers because of the training turnaround time.
Complicated business.
Right.
We have to do the thing. We're 2 years ahead of where we are today, right?
Exactly. And Tanna, you want to talk a little bit more, because I know you and your team work extensively with the implementation team, constantly communicating also to keep everybody up to speed.
We do. And it's really important that we all stay on the same page. Our implementation teams are just complimented every single week about the jobs that they do. And they leave banks with the bank saying, holy cow, we were dreading this and we're so happy right now. But what we do is we work really closely on the slot chart with our implementation team, but we also have a pipeline slot chart. So we have a slot chart of everything that's contracted, but then we also have a slot chart of things that are in the pipeline. So people can look down the road a little ways and make sure that they understand what's coming and the size of those banks and how those banks are going to need to be handled. And our implementation team works so that they're inside the bank working on just deposits or just loans. The teams are broke up so that they can service each piece inside the financial institution. And so we really do a lot of planning. And, it's really nice when you're selling a lot of banks and you've got banks out into 2023 and now 2024, and we can start seeing what our need is going to be on down the road. As the FinTech businesses come in, that has kind of added another whole layer. Some of those are smaller implementations and easier implementations and can happen a little bit faster. But I just feel like we really try to be agile with the bank. We try to work within their constraints. So we have a lot of resources to pull from in a situation where we really would have to pull extra resources, and we've cross-trained, and they are all DCI employees. And I think that's super important also. So we do a lot of planning around implementation so they all stay really good and that our growth is controlled. We are all about community banking. I mean, that is what we are all about. And so we have to make sure that these community bankers are taken care of and that they're growing. And we want to make sure that we play an integral part of them being happy and satisfied as they grow.
Love it. Can we touch real quick? So you mentioned the FinTech being a separate business as a concept. Can we take a moment? I know we've defined it here before, but I think you guys are interesting because you're focused in 3 key sort of new areas that are hard to define. It's all these very big words like FinTech, right? So I'd say area number 1 is direct bank is what we call it. So a digital only brand of a chartered institution, right? And you guys do Redneck Bank, right? And others.
Yeah, these guys invented that stuff.
There you go. Yeah, I've been doing that for years and years.
It was cool before it was cool.
Right. Then you've got a sponsor bank, right? So an institution that's sponsoring a FinTech to do a banking regulated feature, right? About 75, 78 of those today. And then there's FinTechs, right? We'll call them non-chartered. Challenger is maybe a tough word, maybe too big of a word, right? But they're not just the Neos, the Chimes of the world, but there's lots of very niche FinTechs, right? Affirm's a good example. Betterment, those kind of folks. And all three of those groups you guys are doing things with, right? And some of those ecosystems tend to kind of overlap, right? Like multiple parties in one thing for you guys. I've seen some of that. So you want to talk a little bit about.
Before you answer this,
strategy?
I really pound the table with this with bankers. Everybody yells at them, if you got to do something, you're going to die. And they never tell them what the hell to do, right? And I tell them, pick up the phone. Just pick up the phone and we can help you out here. And that's exactly what would I do? I would tell them, call you. That's what I would tell them. Because that's the exact point we made a minute ago about a roadmap of innovation, not a roadmap of maintenance. You guys are skating to where the puck's going to be. And you're always seem to be looking ahead around the bend and trying to focus on what those things are. You've already got exposure to it. You've already talked your way through it. You've done a sample implementation. You've done your test process. Explain to the bankers what that means about what Tanner was saying and how you can put them into the future with a simple phone call.
Yeah, so I'm going to give a lot of the credit on this one to Tanna. Tanna and I, but really Tanna, have spent the last 2 years just digging into the fintech world and understanding, how we can deliver those services. Tanna, I'm gonna let you talk a little bit more about that, but I'd like you to really talk about the example of our bank in the East that we just put on, because that's a perfect example of crossover through all of those different deliveries.
We're super excited about what we're doing on the fintech side. There's a couple of things I want to make sure that we all understand. DCI is doing for the fintechs exactly what we do for the community banks. We're using the same processing systems, the same core processing systems, the same BSA AML, the same, products that are tried and true. We have been doing digital branches for more than 7 years. We know how to do this, and we know how to be multi-branded inside one instance of our core. So 2 weeks ago, we converted a bank on the East Coast that converted to DCI just because they had done a POC with their existing core for 18 months and it just wasn't working for them. They just couldn't all get on the same page with what this bank wanted to do. This is the exciting part. They converted to DCI's core 2 weeks ago. In April, we'll put on their digital branch. Completely different branding, completely different market, completely different look and feel. We'll be doing branded statements for the digital branch. We'll be doing branded notices. We'll be doing a branded onboarding, a branded internet banking, all of that separate from the bank. And then fourth quarter, we're putting on 3 fintechs. So there'll be a sponsor bank. So by the end of this year, they'll start this year converting to our system, and they will have one system that they will be doing core banking on. They will be doing digital banking on, and they will be doing fintech processing as a sponsor bank on. And they will be doing deposits and loans, and the economy of scale. We are going to do the greatest analysis of this when we get done, because we know the economy of scale is going to be phenomenal for the bank. And we know that that economy of scale, as far as the financial cost, is going to be passed on to the fintech. So you, Mr. Fintech, are out there. Are you losing it?
So what I heard there was you can do it faster, better, cheaper, less risk,
and wider.
And you can also make your sponsor bank more attractive to a fintech, because you're going to be able to pass all that on to them as well.
So the
right?
the same system on both sides. Think about the implications for reconciliation, right? BSA, AML.
Bingo.
Yeah, man.
Bingo. Reconciliation. Yeah. One card system, even though you've got multiple different bins or multiple different routing and transit numbers, but one card system. So when you're breaking that all apart to ledger to all the different places, it's one set of reports that get broken apart. We do all of that breaking apart and reporting. Those are the things that at the very beginning of this, we just felt like we had a big leg up on our competition by being able to go to the bank and the fintech and say, listen, you've never had the opportunity to work directly with the core processor. Let work from what we have. We have all of the access to all of the money movement as a processor. So the processor and the bank and the fintech can now work together so that you're not going through 14 different loops to get an ACH done. You're not signing 14 different contracts. You're taking advantage of check systems. You're taking advantage of the bank's OFAC. You're not having to buy another whole system of that. Taking advantage of the pieces that have already been built. And you're using those pieces to be able to be a digital branch, a direct bank, or a sponsor bank. And we feel like that if you look at it from our side of it and look out, let us partner with you. Let us partner so that we can figure out the cost. Part of the reason that we've set the whole fintech world up like we have with these monster accounts and banks that don't have access to the KYC information because it's on the fintech side and all these things. Part of the reason we did that was we were working around the banks and around the core processors because the core processors were costing too much money. So now let's all get on the same page. Let's all sit down and talk. Let's all figure out how we all make money at this, because I know we can save the bank money. That's going to save the fintech money. Now, why would you not want to do business with somebody like